In a few years, VR controllers will be a thing of the past, and I know that most virtual reality games and apps today use controllers, and for some games, it's essential, like in Kayak VR or Beat Saber in Population 1, where you actually need to hold something in the game, so it makes sense to be holding something in real life. But controllers can also be limiting because there's only a set number of buttons and hand configurations. However, we are now seeing the emergence of hand tracking games, which is really exciting. And yes, this means using your hands without controllers to play VR. Essentially, the cameras on your headset can track where your hands are and what they're doing, and is using that as input into VR instead of controllers. There's actually quite a number of VR games that now use hand tracking, and each of these games are developing hand tracking use cases independently of each other, so we're seeing hand tracking integrated in very different ways. Now, before I talk about some of the top innovative games using hand tracking, let's get a little history on hand tracking. So Meta first introduced controllerless hand tracking to the Quest in 2019. However, it was just an experimental feature back then. By the following year, Meta began to allow developers to use the new capability in their apps. This was called Hand Tracking 1.0. And since then, we've seen a handful of games integrate hand tracking into their apps, such as Hand Physics Lab and Unplugged Air Guitar, but these were really more like demos rather than a full game. And that's because Hand Tracking 1.0 wasn't that great and had a lot of issues. However, Meta has been working on improving the Quest 2 hand tracking capability. These improvements have been made possible using re-architected computer vision and machine learning approach. And by the way, all that mumbo jumbo basically means that they did some software magic to improve the hand tracking software. Now, in the past, on version 1.0 of hand tracking on Quest 2, the software had trouble recognizing the user's hand when they were obstructed or touched each other or moved too quickly. But now, the 2.0 version can handle the obstruction and fast-moving incidents better using the same exact piece of hardware. So the updated 2.0 version has also improved gesture recognition. These are very specific hand poses that the system observes as unique and are used as inputs. For instance, pinching is a gesture and it can be used to click on elements on the Quest 2 interface. However, even with the 2.0 improvement, there's still hardware limitations. And as I mentioned before, hand tracking uses the cameras on the headset, but unfortunately, those cameras still have blind spots like behind your head, which causes hand tracking to be lost. But some games are making up for this by using prediction in their software to predict where your hands will be, even if the camera can't see it. Hand tracking is pretty futuristic and at its current state, actually playable in games. But before you get too excited, there is still one downside left with hand tracking. It's that you won't get haptic feedback such as like vibrations the way you would when you're holding controllers. But as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, VR gloves are currently working on that. So I'll link that video in the description if you want to see the latest VR gloves technology. Okay, so finally, let's take a look at some of the cool hand tracking games that you should try along with their pros and cons. Number one is Eolia. Eolia has one of the most unique and interesting hand integrations of hand tracking. I mean, the game devs have found a way to let you walk, jump, climb in virtual reality, all without a controller. It's actually really incredible the creativity that went into allowing players to get full movement in the game using hand tracking. So Eolia is part of the Rhythm of the Universe game series and is the second in the set. The game literally makes you feel like you're in a movie with all the dialogue and the voice acting and the storyline, the music, the scenery, and you can even ride a large creature around the world with hand tracking. There is also an option to use controllers if you don't want to use hand tracking. Since hand tracking doesn't use a traditional hardware input such as like a D-pad, thumb pads, A, B, X, Y buttons, and joysticks, the developers use individual finger joint rotations, pinch strength values, and a system for recording and detecting individual hand poses. For example, you would pinch your left hand, index finger, and thumb together and tilt it back and forth to walk around. You could also turn by pinching your fingers on your right hand and rotating your right hand. And you can open your items by facing your palms up and then grabbing either your journal or your satchel or instrument. You can even browse through the satchel by swiping up and down the way you would on an iPhone. And honestly, the hand tracking mechanics in Eolia is so intricate, it's really amazing. However, this level of intricacy can also be a little bit difficult for VR beginners. But at least there is a secondary option to use controllers gears if needed. It's really interesting how the developers came up with the clever solutions to these locomotion problems. The game itself is great and really makes you feel like the main character of a movie. I think though the graphics, while they're beautiful, could use a little bit more polish. Number 2 is PianoVision. So PianoVision is actually really near and dear to my heart. Like, I've always wanted to learn the piano, but it's not easy. Plus, you need to have a keyboard or a piano, which costs money and takes up room, which living in California, square footage is really hard to come by here. So PianoVision uses pass-through, augmented reality, and hand tracking to help users learn how to play the piano from the comfort of their own home. So the best part about this AR app is that you don't even need a physical piano to play. I mean, you can have a physical piano and overlay the game on top of that, but you don't need it. There's this air piano mode, which projects a virtual keyboard over your real world environment so that you can interact with it using your hands. Like, I had mine overlaid on top of just like an empty table. Now let me repeat that. You can learn how to play air piano from anywhere as long as you have a Quest 2. Like, isn't that insane? We are literally living in the future here. Additionally, people can also connect their MDI keyboards and upload custom songs through a dedicated desktop app. And that allows people to perform their own songs or follow the built-in courses. Now, the thing that really warms my heart about PianoVision is that it uses hand tracking along with AR and VR to teach people a new skill in real life. There's even a multiplayer mode. This means that you can hop into a multiplayer room with an instructor so they can show you how to play the piano. The teacher can even see your avatar and can see what you're playing on the piano. So, a piano teacher from anywhere in the world can teach a piano student, again, anywhere in the world, how to play piano and show them the proper hand movements. Like, if this doesn't blow your mind, like, I don't know what will. This is freaking nuts. So if you've ever wanted to learn how to play the piano or you just want your mind blown, I really recommend PianoVision. By the way, if you love cool VR stuff and applications, make sure to subscribe to my channel because clearly I'm obsessed with this stuff and I just talk about it all the time. All right, number 3 is Rogue Ascent. So Rogue Ascent is a VR sci-fi shooter game that uses hand tracking for Quest. As you all know, I normally don't like shooter games, but the art style of this game is like eye candy. It's literally so pretty. And I just love the way that the game looks and how much you can do with the hand tracking. So in Rogue Ascent, your fingertips turn into deadly weapons. When you want to attack, you just make a gun shape with your hand, and instead of seeing your hands, you'll start seeing like a laser cannon, a sniper rifle. And I think that's the fun part of this game is that there's so many different weapon types. There's like a vending machine that allows you to buy new weapons or upgrade your current ones. It honestly gives me major Borderlands vibes, except with a neon pastel aesthetic. In Rogue Ascent, you can shoot at enemies using your fingers, walk around by hovering your hand over a point of interest, engage your shield by lifting your arms up in front of you. You can even scan for threats in the area or use special attacks. All of these things are using different hand gestures, and I think it's incredible that Clique Games was able to create an entire game with such a wide range of motion, all with hand tracking. Like, honestly, there is so much being done with hand tracking right now. It's so cool. Interestingly enough, it features automatic shooting, so you don't actually have to pull the trigger. You just aim your finger gun at the enemy, and the bullets will automatically fly in their direction. So it's a very cool game, and it even allows for two-handed shooting, but for me, it can get pretty overwhelming because there's so many people, like so many enemies attacking at the same time, and you're trying to use your hands to move, to shoot, to block all at once. But it is a very cool use of hand tracking. Now, speaking of finger guns, number 4 is actually called Finger Gun. Finger Gun is somewhat similar to Rogue Ascent in that your fingertips are guns, but that's pretty much where the similarity ends. Finger Gun is a mixture of a Western-themed shooter where players are the sheriff and they can turn their fingers into guns to take on a brand of evil robotic minions. And the idea of combining cowboys and robots is pretty interesting, right? So in Finger Gun, you can immerse yourself in the Western world as you shoot and grapple with robots. And to shoot, you just shape your hands like a gun and shoot. Except this time it's not automatic shooting, so you actually do need to swipe your thumb down on the side of the gun. This is a hand tracking mechanic that I haven't seen yet, And it's good because it allows the player to have more control over how much ammo they have left, but I feel like your thumbs could get tired and sore after a while of doing this. You can upgrade your weapons using a little slot machine looking thing, and you're able to pick up the cards, pull the slots, all with your hands and without controllers. To move around the map, you have a grappling hook. So you shoot the grappling hook out of your hand and attach it to your desired location. Then you use a rope to pull yourself to that location. Again, I love how unique each of these games' mechanics are. Who thinks of these things? Overall, Finger Gun is a fun wave shooter game that uses hand tracking on Quest 2 in a unique way. Number 5 is VRWorkout. So the VRWorkout app is the only way to do a full body exercise movement without controllers getting in the way in VR. After Quest 2 came out, no one could have expected that working out and fitness in VR would explode the way it did. I mean, from Beat Saber to Supernatural to FitXR to Thrill of the Fight. But all of these use VR controllers. So what would a VR fitness app without controllers look like? VRWorkout has created just that. Players can now do more traditional workout movements in VR, such as push-ups. The intent behind VRWorkout is to allow people to get as close to a real workout as possible in VR, meaning push-ups, sit-ups, squats, side planks, sprints, burpees, etc. And yes, these are all things you can do in VRWorkout. So since there's no controllers, you can do all of that just like you would in real life. Now, personally for me, the reason I like working out in VR is because workouts are more gamified, so I kind of forget that I'm working out. So I don't know if doing actual workouts in VR is for me, but I think the technology is pretty cool and is really interesting. So what do you think about hand tracking in games? And is there any cool hand tracking games I didn't mention that I need to check out? Let everybody know in the comments below. And if you want to see some other cool VR technology, then check out my other videos. As always, thank you to my Patreons and my YouTube members for all your support. Bye!